Yay, that was fun.
Beaming to you from the Plastic Microphone Studios, deep in the heart of Cajun country. This is Fave 5 from Fans. I'm your host, Jamie Ray, and I want to welcome you to episode number 120. Today, I've invited fellow Ron Powell and artist extraordinaire Tobias Codakhrome to the Plastic Microphone Studios to discuss our Fave 5 pre 1960 comedies. You know us here at Plastic Microphone Studios, we get as specific as possible. Um, since receiving his first comic book from his father in 1984, Amazing Spider-Man number 252, Tobias, aka Dr. Chopper, has fallen in love with comic books. The art, the stories, and the culture which surround comics and their characters have so much passion that it is a shared experience for all to partake in. Though his personal tastes rest in the Bronze Age Marvel books, aka ROM, he has really enjoyed meeting new fans, which has brought him into the 21st century with a new generation of comics by both major and independent publishers. When not searching for comic books, Dr. Chopper enjoys painting, photography, and creating both scripted and documentary movies. Maybe he's working on one about Fave 5 right now, who knows? Fueled by a passion for cinema that started in watching hours of Turner Classic Movies with his grandpa growing up. Or, across the Mason Dixon line, they say grandfather. He also loves spending time traveling with his two daughters and his wife, as well as volunteering with the community. Please join me in welcoming Tobias Codakhrome to the show.
Hello, sir.
Hello to you, sir.
Thank you so much for asking me to do this. I'm really I'm honored to be a part of your podcast.
Oh, pshaw. Thank you for agreeing. We have known each other digitally for several years now. And then just last year, we finally got to meet in person at the Heroes Con. And that was awesome. And since then, we've saw each other again at the Fan Expo in New Orleans.
You know, one of the fun things about being able to do what I do is being able to travel and meet folks in person and shaking their hands and really just spending time, because it's so easy these days in the digital world to meet somebody who lives halfway across the world, but to be able to shake their hand in person is definitely much more special.
Yes, and then to finally see the amazing things that you do, which, as a matter of fact, I just can't wait to show people what you do. You just finished a piece for Ming Chin of comic book uh, comic comic book guys,
Comic
comic
book men, yep.
comic book men. That's it. And well, so do me a little favor. Tell us about what it is, this magic thing that you do.
Well, it started in 2016. My wife told me I had to decorate my office. I'm a video editor. That's what I quote unquote studied in school. And I had nice blank white walls. And I said, boy, I said, I'd love to put some comic book art up here. But now this is, you got to remember, 2016 is before the mouse was really starting to merchandise Marvel,
Hmm.
and being a huge fan of the Bronze Age, one of my favorite characters, along, of course, with one of yours, Rom. Another one of my favorite characters is a gentleman by the name of Ghost Rider. So I said, I'd really love to put a Ghost Rider piece up on my
Oh,
wall. And, went to the stores and stuff, didn't find anything. So I kind of had this idea brewing in the back of my head that if I could make this kind of mount the cover and then do a collage of the interior, because I always love not just the cover art, but I also love the interior and the stories and the tidbits in between in between the covers, so to speak. So
mhm.
um I found a frame and I started playing around with making a collage. But the way I saw it in steps or in depths. So it was much more of a 3D idea that I had in my head.
Mhm.
I made the piece, and after about my fifth friend came over and asked me to make one for them, but with their favorite hero, so to speak, or villain, I said, I think I got something. So
Yeah.
in 2018, I met a local promoter of a local show here in Connecticut, named Mitch Halleck from Terrificon. Met him. He was picking up his pulls for the week at his local comic shop, and showed him one of my pieces. And he said, "I'd love to have you at my show." And I did the show. I showed up with about 100 pieces between 8x10 to 12x16 to
Oh,
16x20. And I left with 5.
wow. Well,
So
that
I
doesn't
figured,
surprise me because they are incredible.
well, thank you. And you realize 2 things when that happens. A, it proved to my wife that other people actually would be interested in these.
That's
And
right, honey. I
B,
was right.
yeah, and B, I realized I got to raise my prices. So, but really, one of the things that I've really tried to do when I make these is I try to keep the cost down. I try to make it affordable. I actually spent time working with a preservationist to find adhesives that are not going to, because I'm using the actual comic books.
Right.
And that's why I am called Dr. Chopper, because I'm a villain, because I am cutting up real comic books, which, to the chagrin of many people, I always tell folks when they come up and they're angry and I can't believe you're cutting up a comic book. I have that comic. And I said, well, I just made your comic that much more valuable.
That's right. That is exactly right. Plus, you try to find the ones that aren't going to get high grades anyway.
Right. And and not just that, but also be able to make pieces like yourself as a ROM fan. How many
Mhm.
times have you walked into a store and found something with ROM on it?
Very few. Now, luckily, we are living in the age now where there's more available to us. But you and I both know over the last 8 to 10 years, all you could get was having somebody commission something. And,
Exactly. And
you know,
so it's like, for me, I try to, there's characters that I carry that I try to, NFL Super Pro, which was a Marvel
yes.
weird character, you know. I did a piece with that, and the guy that bought that piece after carrying it around to 5 or 6 shows was so excited. But then I also, as you say, I get a chance, like for instance, Fantastic Four 75 with amazing Jack Kirby artwork.
Yeah.
This the back of the book met a puddle it couldn't fight, it couldn't win.
Oh,
So I took that book and I made a piece with it, and the person that just it didn't even last 2 hours on my wall. Somebody walked by and
wow.
saw it and said, my God, it's an amazing Galactus, Kirby
Uh-huh.
Galactus, and they snatched it right up. So I really, a lot of times I work with, I've made some pieces with some 12-cent DC books, but every
Wow.
single one of the books had the Palisade Park coupon clicked out.
Oh,
So the dealer said, I'm not going to deal with books of that caliber. I only deal with high-end books. And he's like, here, why don't you take them and make something with them?
that's awesome.
So,
Wow.
it's like, if it's a book, if use the term roached, which is I stole from
Oh,
American Pickers. When
okay.
something's roached, it's like, it's been loved, it's been read, it's been, tucked in backpacks and, and everything else. Even if it's a really roached book, if it's a pivotal book, so I do a style where I call it legacy, where I put a book in Mylar and I'll
Hmm.
use a second book or a reprint for the collage. So I'm still very much like, I'm not destroying everything that comes in front of me.
Yes.
I mean, I had I came upon a beat up version of an Avengers number 48, which is the first Black Knight.
Oh, okay.
And so the book, in the condition it's in, is still a $300 or $400 book at like a
Wow.
3 or a 4. So that book is complete in a Mylar, and then I found a Marvel triple action reprint from the 70s to do the collage.
Perfect. There
And
you go.
but I also found the True Believer reprints that are somewhat new.
Yeah.
But if you look, the inks are so, and the pages are so white, it doesn't match the look of the book.
Yes.
So being able to
Yes.
use that Marvel triple action gives it more of that vintage comic feel.
Yeah. I guess you could use like X-Men classics as well to get that kind of thing.
Exactly. And of
Yeah.
course, Marvel Tales for Amazing
Hmm.
Spider-Man. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Tales of Suspense for some of the old Submariner and
Oh,
Iron Man
that's
stuff.
true. Yeah.
Um,
Wow.
I've definitely found alternate means to, where it's kind of funny. Conversely, I did one with a Swamp Thing #1,
Ooh.
and but it was the dollar reprint that DC put out a few years ago, and a gentleman who was a Swamp Thing fan looked at the piece and says, "You know what? I love it because I can actually read it and not feel like I'm like been drinking for 3 days." Because the printing was so blurry and so crazy that on that original pressing, that it was really kind of hard
That's
to read.
awesome. And so, aside from comic books, I've also seen some really interesting things. The thing I bought from you, as much as I love ROM and as much as I love other stuff, for me it was the Orca ad on the
Yes.
back of them,
Yep.
because I swear more than anything that ad for that movie was on so many back covers for that summer, or anyway that period, that it just instantly brought back memories. And it was just so awesome. And I don't want to say simple. I guess what I should say is minimalistic and elegant, where it was just it just popped. So I know that feeling that these people must get when they walk by and they see your piece, and then that one piece speaks directly to them. It's got to
It
be an amazing feeling for you to know that you're bringing so much pleasure to people.
it's amazing to I always say every time I'm making a piece, it has a home, and very rarely is there a piece that I'm carrying around with me for years. If
Hmm.
But the funny thing is like, for instance, I had remember in the 70s, Wonder Woman was printed. They do a Huntress, Earth 2 Huntress story in the back of the Wonder
Okay.
Woman. And so it was even though the cover was a Wonder Woman, the I did the Huntress story in the background. Of course, the cover had, of course, a little bit, with the Huntress like in the bottom corner. But it was like the Huntress with 70s Joker. And
Oh.
it was so much, it was so fun. But whoever was drawing the Huntress was drawing her very like, this was not like 13-year-old kids should be reading this.
Oh.
Like,
Okay.
very sultry, very sexy. And I must have seriously carried that piece with me miles across the country, up and down, for
Uh-huh.
about 3 years. And then I was just at a show, and a guy walked by and he goes, "You wouldn't happen to have any Huntress, would you?" And I showed him I had a Huntress thing. And then I have this one, from the 70s in the back of the Wonder Woman. He goes, "Oh my God." He goes, "That's the Huntress I'm looking for." And he bought it, and
Wow.
he sent me a picture of it, and he's got it hanging, and he's over the moon. So I mean, it's there's so many characters, so much out there, but yet there is a home for just about everything.
Even ads, you do things with
Well,
autographed comics too, where you've slipped them in that Mylar. I
right.
saw a
And then,
couple of
like,
those.
when you say with the ads too, like, so remember in the late 70s, in that like late Bronze Age, they used to do hostess ads.
Oh
And
God,
they'd have
yes.
like the superheroes, and it'd be like, I've thwarted these criminals thanks to this hostess cupcake. Um, so I will do pieces with those hostess ads, because I'll get people that may not be comic fans, or they'll say like, I know he loves Batman, or I know he loves Superman. And
Hmm.
I will sit there and say, I am willing to bet that he has everything but a Spider-Man or a Superman hostess ad. And that comes in real handy for somebody. I sell it for $40, and it's a wonderful, one of a kind little Christmas gift or birthday gift for
Yes.
somebody who, quote unquote, has everything.
Right, right. So, okay, I have two things I want to ask of you. So first, I want to hear the story of why you're Kodachrome. Uh,
Okay.
okay.
So Codachrome, for those of you playing the home game, I spell it with a Codakhrome. Now, for those of us that are of a certain age or older, Codachrome may ring a bell of not just being a Paul Simon song,
I was good there.
but also being a film that you would buy and utilize. Now, it's twofold for the name. I loved photography and being a photographer, and Kodachrome 64 slide film was my jam. I mean, almost every one of those iconic National Geographic covers that you saw in the 70s
Mhm.
was shot with Kodachrome 64. The range of color, the depth of color you would get was just amazing, and it was a beautiful film. Um, Secondly, I so that's why I kind of stuck on Kodachrome, because I kind of in my logo I kind of have a color wheel, and it's kind of like, to me, if you see my work, if you know my work, I love to work in color, and that's something I picked up from my great grandmother, who was also an artist with a piece in the permanent collection of the Smithsonian, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And so the second part of it is, now with the kind of letter change, so going with the CODA, I am a huge fan of graffiti, street art culture, as well as electronic music culture. And a lot of artists like to kind of do play on words, so to speak. Like, there's an
Gotcha.
electronic artist who calls himself Com Truise instead of Tom Cruise.
Ah, okay.
you know Fat Boy Slim, who trying to think of who else, some couple trying to think of some of the graffiti artists as well who go by monikers and stuff. So I just kind of liked Kodachrome as something to kind of represent me and my art. And
Yeah.
and kind of so that's where that really stems from, is it's a nod to that graffiti, hip hop, electronic music culture, but it's also a nod to the film that I loved shooting with. And I still actually have 4 rolls of it, that I've not shot. And of course, if I
Wow.
shoot them, we won't be able to see them, because the chemicals to process the film are no longer made.
Wow. That's so you can't get them processed anywhere?
Nowhere. Now, there was a place in Kansas that was processing Kodachrome stuff. They actually put out a T-shirt, which I bought the T-shirt to commemorate their last run of Kodachrome film, and I think it was like
Wow.
15 years ago now. There's a movie called Kodachrome as well, which the basis of the movie, it's a father-son movie, like, but the basis is that they're driving to this place in Kansas to develop this roll of Kodachrome film that the father found, and they wanted to develop it before they did their last run. It was called the
Wow.
place was called Dwayne's Photo. It was in Kansas.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Okay, and so the other thing is you told me a story about Gilbert Godfrey and a piece. Could you share that story too? Because I thought that was amazing.
Well, so when I'm working on my things, I to keep me on track, so to speak, to stop letting the dory shiny objects thing for those Finding Nemo fans, where I get distracted fast. I listen to things that kind of helps keep me on task of what I'm doing. So podcasts are huge. I love listening to your podcast while I'm
Oh,
working.
thank you.
As well as Gilbert Godfrey had a podcast that I love, because it's centered around a lot of it centered around actors from classic TV and films,
Yes.
which is my wheelhouse. That's my jam. And so I would listen to this podcast. And one of the things I realized in listening to this podcast is that Gilbert loved uh, the old Universal monster movies. And
Yes.
not only that, but they would talk a lot about the Aurora model kits that would come out in the 70s that you used to buy, and you'd create Frankenstein and Dracula and the Mummy. And so I found on the back of one of the comic books an ad for these Aurora kits, and I worked my magic on it. And I said, I want to give this to Gilbert Godfrey. And it my hometown con, so to speak, Terrificon, which I mentioned before that I'd done. Gilbert Godfrey was actually signed up to be a guest at the convention, and I was over the moon, because I of course I love his comedy and everything else, but comedians are that could be another fave five for us in another another day. But I just his love of movies and my love of movies, like I know that we would end up just talking about movies, like we
Right.
would talk about comedy or anything else. And I wanted to thank him for doing the podcast and I wanted to share with him what I did. And I was like, I'm going to give this to him at Terrificon. And of course, Terrificon was in August that year. And I think it was in June that he passed away before the con. So he was
It was April because I looked it
April.
up
Yeah.
when you were
Oh, there you
telling me
go.
that. Yep, April 12th.
So it was like, so I mean, it was like I was planning on this, giving him this
Yeah.
piece at the convention, and then unfortunately passed away. I've since given the piece to a mutual friend, kind of in remembrance to him,
Hmm.
and which the friend was very thankful, and he thanked me very much for it. And he said Gilbert would have loved it,
Yeah.
and and he was. He said, Gilbert didn't really have a lot of things like this. He kind of was a very minimalistic guy, he said, but he would have liked this.
That's
So
awesome.
I
Yeah.
thought was awesome.
I thought that's a great story, man. That's awesome. And if you're hearing this and you're interested, it's called Gilbert Gottfried's Amazing Colossal Podcast with Frank Santopadre. Is that how they
Yes.
say it?
And
Yeah.
they if you are a fan of classic Hollywood, or like even
Hmm.
like they'll have like stars from like 70s and 80s TV shows as well. Character actors that, if you're a TCM nerd like me, who they are, there's a whole world. If you're unfamiliar with those, it's well worth listening to, because you gain such a deeper appreciation for a lot of these stars when you actually go and seek out their work.
Yeah.
It's really amazing, to explore this, and the passion for classic TV and film is just, I mean, like you would just start randomly singing TV themes. It's like you sit there and you wonder, like, I don't know about you, Jamie, but in my head, I'm sit there and I can hum like the whole My Three Sons, from the beginning to end. Yet I can't remember to pick up milk at the store, that when I'm standing in front of the freezer. So
Well, I could beat that. I took the dog for a walk Saturday morning just specifically to get a stool sample because he was going to the vet, and then I took him to the vet with no stool sample. So I'm
I
right
I,
there with you, man. I
I
am right
know
there with you.
I feel your pain. Of course, when you do go to the vet with the stool sample, you're kind of like, boy, you guys must get the best gifts here.
It's so true. All right. Well, okay. So where can people find your work aside from going to Big Lick Comics in what was it, Virginia?
And
They have a
I'm in
bunch
a
of
few different stores. I'm in Big Lick Comics in Roanoke, Virginia. I'm at Boom Tube Comics, which is in Southington, Connecticut. I also have a few other stores that I carry my work, but you can go to Codakhrome Comic Shop, and remember that Codakhrome, CodaChromeComicShop.com. And there's some links right from there. You can also search it on the Facebook and the Instagrams. And I always tell folks that Etsy is usually the last place my stuff shows up. If you want to see what I'm working on currently, definitely the Instagram and Facebook are where you want to go. I've had people buy pieces from me right straight from me making them and posting what I'm working on. So
hmm
um, usually by the time it gets to Etsy, it means it's been with me for a show or two, and I got a couple of weeks off, and I can finally catch up. So um, the good stuff, like when I'm cutting up a McFarlane Spider-Man #1, or or a Fantastic 475 Kirby, that stuff usually never makes it back home again from the show I bring it to.
And you do a lot of shows. That's actually where this idea, this topic came from, was when we met in January for Fan Expo New Orleans.
Yeah,
And
it was funny because you said you gotta come up with a subject for your favorite five. And I pop culturally, I'm so all over the place. I mean, as I said, like comedians, music, movies, but I upon that, all the different fave fives that I could do, favorite fives I could do. I kind of had to do my own fave five subjects I'd want to talk about. And this really, the subject we came up with is one that I think that I could probably speak till the cows come home on.
Well, there we go. And that topic, once again, is comedies that are dated from 1959 backwards. So nothing from 60 on. And these are comedies that have a very wide range of uh, actors and groups. And I really enjoyed this list. I didn't actually find it as difficult as you probably did. I did find out that several of my favorites were from the 60s and 70s. So it made for a very interesting work. And I will tell you that when we get to our honorable mentions, the first one out of the gate is going to cause some controversy, maybe, but I'm sticking with it.
Well, I will say it's one of the people may be saying, why 1960?
That's the question.
Right? What is that dividing line? And I will tell you that one of my fave fives will explain why that cutoff is 19,
Okay.
why it's 1960.
I figured it would come out at some point. So you may be asking yourself, if you've never listened to the show before, what is an honorable mention? Well, it's something that either it was just there were too many things to make the actual cut of the five. So we give you a little wiggle room, or it had to be something that was so bad, or something that was just memorable, though not a favorite, that it had to be mentioned. And so I'm assuming you took advantage of the honorable mentions.
My honorable mentions could be their own show in themselves.
Again, we have a standing uh, we have a how do I say this? We have a standing record of 16 honorable mentions. So I think that you are under that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I'm well. That beats me by 2.
All right. All right. Well, Coda, if you're ready, I say let's get started with our honorable mentions.
All right. So honorable mentions. I will count these down too from 8 to 1, so to speak. Mr. Blandings builds his dream house from 1948, starring Cary Grant and Myrna Loy. And of course, it's a story about a guy who is an ad exec in New York who moves out to the quote unquote country of Connecticut, and they buy a house that basically is just falling apart. And the movie was kind of emulated a couple times. I think one Ice Cube did a remake of it in the 2000s, as well as you may have remembered the Money Pit
Money
with Tom
Pit. That's
Hanks.
exactly what I was hearing. Yep.
Yep,
And
that
Shelley
was
Long, I think.
yep, and Shelley Long that kind of borrowed from this movie as well. Number 7 of the honorable mentions would be A Slight Case of Murder by Edward G. Robinson. Now, that came out in 1938. Now, you got to remember that in the 30s, one of the reasons why we had we'll talk about later, the Hays Code or the Motion Picture Code, was because of gangster movies and the violence that perpetuated gangster movies.
Yeah, see?
Exactly. And it's so the interesting thing is that by the late 30s, you now have Edward G. Robinson still playing the gangsters, but now there was a comedic twist to him.
So
And A
it was
Slight
okay.
Case of Murder is a funny Edward G. Robinson film. A comedy which still encapsulates that gangster feeling, but it's now much more comedic instead of violent. By the way, on a side note, oh God, what's his name? Not Edward G. Robbins, James Cagney. When James Cagney, when he received his Lifetime Achievement for Oscar from the Academy, he said he came up to accept the award, and he said, "I just want to let everybody know that I never said you dirty rat," which was actually Edward G. Robinson who said it. My 6th honorable mention is one of the first romantic comedies ever released.
Ooh.
It stars Clark Gable and Claudine Colbert, and it's called It Happened One Night. And it's basically kind of a road romantic comedy where the two fall in love as they hit all these madcap little zany situations, as he is a newspaper man and she is a millionaire heiress, and they are traveling to get from one point to the other. um, and Mr. Jim Steranko, for comic book fans,
Yeah.
he actually, Indiana Jones's hat came from Clark Gable wearing it in this movie.
Wow.
Interesting, right?
That is very interesting. It
Kind of
happened
funny.
one night.
That's where my classic film knowledge came in real handy one day, having dinner with Steranko. And next thing you know, we were talking for 2 hours about classic films, and we didn't even mention comic books at all.
That's cool.
Number 5, honorable mention, is Brother Orchid. This also stars Edward G. Robinson. This one came out 2 years after A Slight Case of Murder. And this one's funny. Brother Orchid is basically, he's a gangster who's gone straight. And everything that is being presented and coming at him would lead him right back down to the road of missalvation, but he does not take it. And throughout the whole thing, everything around him is crooked, but he stays straight the whole way.
That's
And that
awesome.
it's a funny gangster film there. And I would say out of the two, Brother Orchid is the one to buy to watch.
Okay. All right.
My fourth honorable mention, we're back to Cary Grant again. You can see a little bit of a theme. I'm a huge fan of Cary Grant. This one stars Cary Grant in the beautiful Anne Sheridan, and it was from 1948. And the original title of this was way too long that I'm not going to read it, but it's probably about 3 sentences. But they shortened it to "I Was a Male War Bride," and
Oh, yes.
it was based on a true story of a gentleman from France who married a U.S. Servicewoman, and his exploits of trying to get back home to the United States as a married couple. And of course, most of the people that he's with are women who were married by U.S. GIs, and so he's the only guy. And it's a funny little thing going on.
That's hilarious.
All
I've
right,
seen that one.
Now that I get to my third honorable mention, this was kind of a throwaway movie. And when I say a throwaway movie, it was basically the movie that fulfilled Groucho Marx and Frank Sinatra's obligations to RKO. It was for their contract.
Okay.
It was starring a beautiful lead named Miss Jane Russell. For those of you who are not familiar with Jane Russell, Google Jane Russell and take a look at this Jane Russell. Now, the name of the movie is called Double Dynamite, and it is basically 1951 American musical comedy. Now, in this film, Frank Sinatra plays a bank teller, and he wants to basically ask Jane Russell to marry him. And using a formula that we will touch upon maybe later on, Groucho Marx is basically befriends the romantic couple and is kind of the Cupid to kind of help to keep them, to bring them together. Now, he ends up helping out a guy who basically gives him brings him with him and gives him a tip. He realizes this guy's a bookie, and he gives him a tip on a horse, and he wins $1,000. Now, the other funny thing is he's like, I'm going to ask her to marry me now. We got money. We're going to be all set. He gets to the bank after his lunch break of having this bookie and the $1,000 in his pocket. And wouldn't you know, there's $1,000 missing from the till.
No.
Now he has to figure out, he doesn't want to get implicated in this. If you are a fan of Frank Sinatra, there's a couple great songs with him singing in it. Of course, Jane Russell as well sings in this. Now, the film named Double Dynamite, it was actually originally entitled It's Only Money, but RKO new owner Howard Hughes said, we need to change the title to Double Dynamite because that was his nickname for Jane Russell's breasts. Now, Bosley Crowther, who was a critic for New York Times, this was his review. Whatever that sizzling title is supposed to mean, this thin little comedy is strictly a wet firecracker. And
Oh
The three
man.
stars are marking time along with the audience in a slow, dull, and predictable tale. Now, the movie itself was actually released only on DVD in 2008 and promptly went out of print. You can still find it as a part of a Frank Sinatra box set on DVD or as a used DVD, but it is a hard one to find. But it is on Turner at least every 2 to 3 months. And
Oh
if you
wow.
can see it, you definitely have to.
That's
Um,
interesting.
all right.
So
And
before
then
we
I
go
got two
further,
more.
I got a question for you.
Oh, yeah.
What do you like about it that this critic thought was so bad? I mean, what makes it good for you? A favorite.
Jane Russell and Frank Sinatra are so cute together,
Mm-hmm.
and there's just something about early Frank before he became bloated Frank
Yeah.
that it was like this innocent. I don't want to say cuteness because nobody calls Frank cute, but um,
They
but
do once.
yeah,
One time.
yeah. But I mean, and then I love Groucho and
Mm-hmm.
just the Groucho quips in between the love story and like the whole thing with the bookie, because like what happens is he goes to tell his friend, like, look, there was a bookie, I'll show you, and then they go back to where the bookie was, which was like a laundromat, and he gets there and it's a laundromat. There's no phones, there's no
Oh.
nothing. So it's like, it's just this madcap story that I really feel it's, it is predictable. It is, but they just, the three of them just pull it off so well. And Jane Russell is just so easy on the eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, and so just make sure you understand, I'm not asking you to defend your
Oh, no, no,
choice.
no,
Yeah.
no. That's
I'm
what I
just
love about it.
wondering. Oh, thank you. But that's the things that for me, I'm like, okay, well, this guy hated it so much. What is it that brought it to you? And obviously, aside from Jane Russell.
I also love old Frank, like
Yeah.
the early Frank Sinatra stuff from the 40s and the 50s, from Tom being with Tommy James and stuff, to
Mhm.
before he which is like the opposite for Elvis for me. Like I love like fat bloated Elvis and Vegas
Oh,
Elvis, because but it's like it's just like there still was like an innocence when you looked at Frank in his eyes, you still saw a glimmer in him. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Whereas I think that kind of wore off as the years went on.
Ah, all right. Well, that's a great choice then. All right. So
Um,
now we're down to your
two
number
more.
two more. Now we're in your real honorable mentions.
Yes. And so this
Okay.
one is actually very recent because I just saw it for the first time about a month and a half ago
Oh
on Turner.
wow.
And I fell in love with it because and it's a film starring Mae West, which I never Mae West
Ba
kind
ba
of
boom.
well, she kind of bothered me, honestly.
Oh really?
The whole act, and it was an act. I mean, it's just but it was basically 1933. It was a pre-code black comedy. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is called I'm No Angel. It was her third film for Paramount. And the interesting thing about this movie is that it was her second in a row with Cary Grant. Yet here he is again.
There he is again.
Um, but she actually, because of the success of the first movie with Cary Grant, which was just released a couple months prior, she received basically carte blanche to not only write the script, but to produce the film,
Wow.
which for a woman to produce a film in 1933, just take a step back and think about that.
Wow.
You
That
know what
is
I mean?
crazy.
So
Yeah.
she was on that Paramount Pictures lot and basically calling the shots in her own career in 1933, which I thought was amazing.
It
Um,
is.
and it was one of her only films that was not subjected to heavy censorship. So
Yeah.
it is sultry.
Oh wow.
It is like her jokes are like, I mean, her jokes are like, my wife was watching it with me and she looked at me and she goes, this was 1933. And I'm like, yeah, this is pre-code. This is
Wow.
before the Hays Code. Um, so it was released immediately after she did a movie called She Done Him Wrong.
Hmm.
Um, She was one of the nation's biggest box office attractions and most controversial star uh, right now at this point in her career. And in fact, her films are an important factor in saving Paramount Pictures from bankruptcy. Now, during the difficult times of the Great Depression, many filmgoers responded very well to her, especially because she usually played a woman who was from the quote unquote wrong side of the tracks. So, those you got to remember in Depression era America, people did not want to see people in mansions and living
Right.
high on the hog. And
Yeah.
so she really did that. Now, Cary Grant starred opposite her for the second and final time. That the two of them, we'd see the two of them together. Now he later was extremely annoyed with her because for decades after that, Mae West often would say that she's the one that found Cary Grant,
Oh.
and he was really very angry about that. He actually had a hit before he even starred with Mae West in a movie called Blonde Venus that starred him. That he started with Marlene Dietrich, who's also
Oh yeah.
another beautiful woman. Um, it predates their first film. She done him wrong by a year, but it's funny because Mae West would say amusingly, "Well, yeah, he did a few test films with Starlet."
Test films.
But
Wow.
another interesting pit that I found out is that this film was actually Franklin Roosevelt's favorite film.
Really?
Yes, believe it or not. And so the
Wow.
film basically is Mae West is a circus performer, and her boyfriend gets caught in stealing some money, goes to jail, and then she goes out on her own and starts wooing these gentlemen that are more affluent. One of them
Mm-hmm.
being played by Cary Grant ends up marrying him, and then they end up having a lover's quarrel, so to speak, and she takes him to court, and
Wow.
the courtroom scene is absolutely hilarious with her talking, "Hello, hey, judgy," like now. It also has a line that was number one in the American Film Institute's top 100 movie quotes.
Okay.
This was number one in their list of 100 top quotes was from this film, and it's Mae West saying, "Well, it's not the men in your life that count, it's the life in your men."
Oh, that's come up and see me sometime, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
she did that
Yep.
too, and she has a few, but
Like you know how to you whistle. Just is
yep.
that yep. Okay.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. The whistle, that's Lauren Bacall. That's from To
Lauren
Have or
Bacall.
Have Not,
Okay.
which is, oh my gosh, that's another film for when we talk about dramas, because it's
Uh-huh.
basically To Have or Have Not was a ripoff of Casablanca.
Mm-hmm.
And because they basically Casablanca was such a hit, they tried it again, but this time they brought in a then 19-year-old Lauren Bacall to a 50-year-old
Humphrey Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you just see the electricity between those two on the screen. And he was Humphrey Bogart, by the way, was married at that time with two kids, and he actually left his wife for Lauren Bacall on that
Wow.
film. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
So I'm
man,
down to
you're just full of it.
my number one honorable mention. And by the way, here's a funny thing. By the way, a little side note. Speaking of Cagney and Bogart, one day they were at a stoplight. James Cagney noticed Humphrey Bogart across the way at the stoplight picking his nose, and so he actually went back to the studio and had a telegram sent to Humphrey Bogart that said, "People who strike famous poses shouldn't be at stoplights picking their noses."
Oh my God.
Like, I love old Hollywood. All right. My number one honorable mention, and this one was hard because this one was in my fave five, in and out, in and out, in and out.
Mm-hmm.
This was written by Mahatma Kane Jeeves. Mahatma Kane Jeeves was a pen name for none other than W.C. Fields.
Oh,
There's a movie called The Bank Dick from 1940. Now, it wasn't his first film, but it was the first film that he actually got to write himself. He used the alias Mahatma Cain Jeeves as a play from an old Broadway comedy cliche where they would say, "My hat and my cane, Jeeves."
Okay.
So this movie also stars Shemp Howard. At this point, Shemp had been a part of the vaudeville act with
Okay.
Ted Healy as the Three Stooges, which also had Larry Fine as well
Mhm.
in it. He actually left the act because him and Ted Healy kind of got into it, and that's when, of course, Curly was brought into that act, and then Ted Healy ultimately left the act, and that Larry Fine, Moe, and Curly continued on as the Three Stooges, and at this point, Shemp was a contract player. He plays the bartender in the Bank Tick, which is funny. He's really funny in it. He would just kind of in the movie, he just kind of goes for these walks, and like you just randomly see him walk by like in scenes, like just like in the background and stuff. Like no idea where the bartender's going. He'd just be like, "I'm leaving," and he'll go, and then you see him like walking by like three scenes later.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
uh, Alternate titles for this film were The Bank Detective and The Great Man. Of course, with the success of his two previous films, You Can't Cheat an Honest Man and My Little Chickadee, W.C. Fields is able to demand complete creative control of this film. Now, in a list submitted to Cinema Magazine in 1963, Stanley Kubrick named this his eighth favorite film.
Wow.
Now, one of the a very famous scene in this film, because of course one of the things he would do is he basically, it's a comedy of errors. So I kind of say it's kind of like being Forrest Gump, where you just kind of happen to be in a scene.
Mhm.
Like there was one where he's yawning and he stretches out his arms, and as he stretches out his arms, he knocks out the bank robber,
Oh.
and the gun falls, and so he picks up the gun, and then somebody comes up and goes, "Hey, he got the bank robber. He foiled the robbery." And he goes, "Oh yeah, yeah, of course I did. Yeah."
Yeah.
Just kind of going along with it. One of the best scenes. He's with the bartender, Shemp Howard, in the bar, and he was, "By the way, was I in here last night? And did I spend a $20 bill?" The bartender nods yes, and then he goes, "Oh, what a load! What a load it is off my mind. I thought I lost it." So, the film has only been released on DVD once on the Criterion Collection, but
Mm,
it's been since out of print. So that is one that you really kind of only luck upon, either if you find the DVD or if it is on Turner. Again, that's another one that's in heavy rotation. Um, it is predictable. Like a lot of the reviews said that the characters and things are, but it's just funny to watch W.C. Fields work, and knowing that he did everything on that, wrote the script and stuff, it just makes it that much more funnier.
yeah. Wow. That's man, that's quite a list. Okay, well, thanks for joining the show. I appreciate it.
I want to hear your honorable mentions. Now we're going to get into it.
All right, all right. So again, this one is going to be a little controversial. Um, it is a movie from 1946, and I don't think that it's normally talked about as a comedy. It's more of a Christmas movie and a fantasy movie. But the chemistry between Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed in It's a Wonderful Life just makes this so hard to not put on this list. This is one of my favorite Jimmy Stewart movies. It's one of my favorite Christmas movies. I watch it every year. But the comedy in it is gold. And there are two specific scenes that I love the most. The first is when George Bailey and Mary are walking after being dunked in the pool, and she only has a robe in and she falls into a bush. And there's this whole back and forth where she's like, "Give me your," and he's like, "No, no, man doesn't get into a situation like this every day." And he's having his whole conversation to himself. And I loved the back and forth of it. But my favorite part ended up being, from what I understand, a total happenstance, a mistake, is after the party where Uncle Billy comes out the back door and he's drunk looking for his hat. And George takes his hat off of Billy's head and hands it to him. And he's like, oh, thank you, George. Which is mine? And George says, the middle one. But there were so many parts in that movie that just made me laugh out loud. Again, the chemistry that so many of the actors had. Oh, I'm sorry. And the other part about the Uncle Billy is when he walks off stage and supposedly runs into a bunch of trash cans. The actor actually stumbled into a stack of film canisters and knocked them over. And Frank Capra just loved it so much that he left it in the movie. Um,
That's funny. I gotta say, I never in a million years would think of It's a Wonderful Life as a comedy.
yeah,
I have
yeah,
to say,
but
I mean, but I see the, with you explaining that, I see the comedic parts in that for
mhm.
sure.
Yeah. And
100%.
there's so many cool, cute little things like when Mary and George I think they're throwing I think before the Bush thing happens, and the old guy's like, well, kiss her. And he's like, you think I should kiss her? Ah, youth is wasted on the young. It's just things like that just sprinkled throughout the movie. Hee haw.
I
So
mean,
many things make me love it.
Jimmy Stewart definitely is not a stranger to comedy. I mean, I
Mhm.
think, one of the ones that almost made my honorable mention list is Harvey, of course.
Oh, of
So,
course.
yeah, so I mean, he can definitely deliver comedy 100%. I guess for me, it's just that whole redemption thing with Clarence, and
Hmm.
it's just I would never think of it as a comedy, but I now that you explain it, I 100% see the a lot of that comedic tones in that movie.
Yeah, yeah. And then my other honorable mention, this one is not generally thought of as a comedy as well. Now, mind you, my other five are comedies, straight out comedies, but this one is from 1947. It stars Gene Tierney and Rex Harrison, and directed, talking about Turner Classics and whatnot, Joseph L. Mankiewicz. Um, and
And
it's called,
Mankiewicz uncle, yeah.
yeah, it's called The Ghost and Mrs. Muir.
Mm.
And it's such an interesting. You like that one?
I, I don't see, again. I don't like comedy. Really?
I know. For
Are we
me, it's
watching the same film? How are you? What state of mind are you in when you're watching these?
well, I will say I love horror films. Okay, and the fact that a woman in the 1900s, early, maybe even 1900, moves to this seaside English cottage with her daughter, who was played by Natalie Wood, and they don't want her to stay because the house is haunted by Captain Daniel Gregg, who's played by Sir Rex Harrison there. And for me, it's just funny because up to that point in certain like Topper and some of the other movies is ghosts were dealt with, it's just comedic elements. Topper was one that almost made it onto my list. But this one, the way that the relationship that they make, and the fact that she's just so not scared of him, and how it totally ruffles his feathers, is just gold for me. And then when she starts bringing suitors around, and he just does not like any of them.
Now, my question to you now, this is the, not to get too far off subject, but
Mhm.
there used to be a TV show that was based on that movie, right?
You got me there.
I remember there being a TV show as a kid, and because I remember seeing the movie and then going like, wait, I saw this, but it was in color and on TV.
Wow. Do you remember who was in it?
I don't. I don't. You see, like this is when like fuzzy 70s brains. Let's go to the videotape. Yeah, 1968 sitcom.
Oh,
Yeah, there it is, right there with Edward Mulhare. That's right, from Knight Rider. Later on in Knight Rider, played Devon in Knight
really?
Rider.
And he played the captain?
He played the captain, and Hope Lang played Carolyn Muir, and Rita Shaw played like the maid or the
Mm. Yep. Yep.
you know. And Charles Nelson
Charles-
Riley was in it too. See, that's where I remember. I
That's
remember
gold
Charles
right
Nelson
there.
Riley. So look at that, 1968. Gosh, I saw that in reruns.
Wow, must have. That doesn't even ring a bell with me. I'll have to go and look it up because I sure enjoy this film.
People are going to think like, how old is this Codachrome guy?
So one of my favorite exchanges was when Lucy, who was again played by Gene Tierney, she says, and when she tells him, I really wish you wouldn't swear. It's so ugly. To which the ghost replies, if you think that's ugly, it's a good thing you can't read my thoughts.
It's
And
funny because even with drama, I mean, I
Mhm.
think you're bringing up a great point that even with like things that are quote unquote drama, right? Like
Yeah,
there has to be an element of comedy to move it forward or to engage and to really humanize the characters, I think.
I agree. I agree. And
Like the exchange with Jimmy Stewart and Donna Reed, like with the overcoat, and like this one here, between the two of them, if you could only read my thoughts,
yeah,
I mean, that's real. That's just like real being real.
right, right. So, but I do promise that my other five are straight out comedies.
All right, right on. All
Okay.
right.
All right. So let's go ahead and get to your number five.
All right. Number 5 stars a guy who was basically the Jim Carrey of his era.
Hmm.
He's a gentleman by the name of Joe E. Brown,
Okay.
and of course, he was from Ohio, and he actually started with Warner Brothers in 1928, and he would do kind of more shorts, as he first started. But he became much more of he ended up becoming more of a huge star, and by this point, he did a film in 1936. He did a film called Earthworm Tractors. Now, Earthworm Tractors was starring him, as well as June Travis, and I don't know if you're familiar with a character actor by the name of Guy Kibbe, but
No.
he always kind of played the grumpy old guy with the bald head and the white ring around the head.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
I think he's in that
Yeah.
too. And now the film was actually based on characters created in a series of stories that appeared in the Saturday Evening Post. Now his character's name is Alexander Botts, and he was the eternally optimistic, self-proclaimed natural-born salesman. So he basically gets a job with the Earthworm Tractor Company, where he's going to sell tractors. And
Okay.
it was actually the person who wrote these short stories about Alexander Botts. The author was actually based it on his own experience working with Caterpillar tractors at the time. So it became such a hit in the Saturday Evening Post that they actually made a movie about it.
Wow.
And so Joey Brown was, I mean, it's slapstick. It is funny as hell. I remember watching it with my grandfathers. Alexander Botts, he'd reach into his pocket and take out his card, and he'd do this motion with his hand, and I'm Alexander Botts, salesman. And it was just, but if you can imagine that like rubber smile like Jim Carrey has,
Yes.
he basically, Joey Brown was the guy that actually really did that was what he did in the 30s.
Okay.
Kind of interesting, the failure of the original copyright holder to renew the film. It is now a public domain film, and you can actually watch this on YouTube. It's probably I think it's about an hour long.
Uh-huh.
He basically, Joey Brown plays Alexander Botts, who wants to woo this girl to marry him, and the father says, of course you can't marry unless you get a good job. So he goes out and he gets a job with the sends to the Earthworm Tractor Company that he wants to sell their tractors, and so they said, well, we're going to send you to our our worst client, or send him to this client. If he can sell this client, he can sell anybody. And of course, played by Guy Kibbe, who's hard of hearing, can't hear or anything. And of course, hilarity ensues as they're trying to sell this guy a tractor. I don't want to give up the ending for anybody who's going to watch it, but it's a lot of fun. um, Joey Brown as well was a huge baseball fan. He actually
Mhm.
a lot of his comedies, a few of his comedies for Warner Brothers also revolved around baseball. Um, I thought another interesting part, as I was kind of delving in, just kind of looking at Earthworm Tractors, is that Joey Brown actually had a brush fire destroy his home in 1961, and he had a lot of memorabilia from a lot of his old films
Oh,
that was lost in that fire. So that he's kind of faded away. Like, you probably, you couldn't throw a rock and not hit somebody who knew who Joey Brown was in the
yeah.
40s. But these days, nobody really knows who he is anymore. So that's definitely well worth watching. But to me, it is if I turn on Turner and it's on, I watch it from wherever it's in.
Well, I see he was also in Some Like It Hot
Yep.
and um, Around the World in 80 Days, another one that
Yes.
almost made my
He had a
list.
career resurgence in the 50s, and there was
Hmm.
kind of like he was kind of found again, much kind of like the Marx Brothers were kind of found again in the 50s as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a good one. And looking at his picture, I do recognize that face.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that's a good one then. All right, let's see what I can do to parry that with a true comedy from 1948, standing out with Wilbur Gray and Chick Young, who are baggage handlers, and they come across the remains of Frankenstein's monster in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. Dracula wakes up and after he's gotten to, from Europe, he's in like a haunted house. And so you've got Dracula, you've got Frankenstein, you've got the Wolf Man, and I'm going to go ahead and spoil the very end because I love this part of it. So at the very end of the movie, Chick is saying, "Oh, relax. Now that we've seen the last of Dracula, the Wolfman, and the monster, there's nobody to frighten us anymore. Oh, that's too bad. I was hoping to get in on the excitement." Says this voice, and they're like, "Whoa, who's that?" It's allow me to introduce myself. I am the Invisible Man, and the movie ends. And that is actually an uncredited cameo by Vincent Price.
Very nice.
So, of all the Abbott and Costello movies, this is the one that I like the most. I know that there are a ton of them, but because you've got the original Lon Chaney, you've got Bela Lugosi, you've got Abbott and Costello, and then you've got this at the very end with Vincent Price. It's just checks all of my boxes. And just I mean the way that Abbott and Costello, there's nobody who doesn't know who they are. At least not listening to this show, probably. They are just, for me, comedic genius in this movie.
So it's the monster element that puts that one over the top for you.
Yes, definitely.
That's
Definitely.
awesome. That's a
Yeah.
that's a great pick.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, let's bounce that back to you, and you can give me your number 4.
My number 4. Now it stems from a stage play, and really in the 40s and the 50s, a lot of stage plays found their way to become Hollywood scripts. Of course, many of them being adapted by screenwriters, but really the premise is there, and they knew it was going to be a winner if it did well on Broadway. So you saw a lot of these old, of course, I mentioned Harvey before. That was one that was originally a stage play that became a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But this one is one of my favorite, not just my favorite comedies, but one of my favorite Halloween movies to watch.
Oh.
from 1944, directed by Frank Capra, Arsenic and Old Lace with Cary Grant.
Oh.
Now, a couple interesting things about this movie. Now, first of all, you have Jean Adair and Josephine Hull with John Alexander, who plays, of course, Teddy, his brother, Teddy Brewster. Now, the three of them were actually from the Broadway production. So
Mhm.
when Frank Capra was assigned to doing this film, he actually brought in the two actresses and the actor that were doing this night after night on Broadway. The problem is that they could not find a Mortimer. And here's a little fun little side story. You ready for this, sir?
I'm ready for it.
So if we rewind back to the late 20s, Archibald Leach was a young boy who came over from England and started working on the New York stage. Um, Back when you were working on the New York stage, a lot of times they had men's rooming buildings or houses.
Mhm.
And so he was working and he caught influenza, which back then was deadly.
Yeah.
So he was kicked out of his rooming house and he had nowhere to go. And so he was working on the stage in a play where there was Josephine Hull and Jean Adair. And they took him in and they nursed him back to health. And of course, Archibald Leach was the real name of Mr. Cary Grant. So
Mhm.
now, fast forward to 1944, and they cannot find their Mortimer Brewster. Well, Jean Adair and Josephine Hull called in a favor, and Cary Grant, without even batting an eyelash, said, "I will be there." And he
Wow.
actually came into that, basically pushed to get that. That was the push it needed to get the film made. Of course, now we have our villains being played by Peter Lorre and Raymond Massey.
Yeah.
And really one of the first films to break the fourth wall,
Mhm.
as Cary Grant, of course, hilariously is coming upon the finding the dead body in the box there by the window, and
Right.
he looks down at the box and looks at us and then looks back kind of like, did you see that too? Now Cary Grant, of course, in 1962 said that he considered this to be his worst film. He
What?
said his acting is horribly over the top.
Yeah, but that's part of it.
Exactly.
Like the whole time when he's tied up and he's got the
Yep.
bandana in his mouth and he can't talk. I
Yep.
mean, he's so animated.
And it's just I don't I cannot watch that movie without crying from
Uh-huh.
laughter. And the way that he plays that, and the way when he breaks that fourth wall and just looks at us, I just, you know, to me that's the film that I sit there and when people ask me, is there another Clooney? I mean, is there another Grant? I gave it away. George Clooney, I think, could pull that off. I
Yeah.
really do. I think he has that same comedic sense to his acting, that, and he does. Like if you watch the Ocean's movies and stuff, I mean, it's
Mhm.
kind of, he has that same swaggerly, fun bit of humor.
Yeah.
But here's a little funny story about Arsenic and Old Lace. Do you know it's based on a true story?
I have heard that before, but I could not back that up.
It's a real life story. Amy Archer Gilligan, who lived from 1873 to 1962, she was a serial killer who murdered between 20 and 100 people. Now, the problem is that she buried them in the basement of her house. And so it was kind of like scattered bones. So you weren't able to actually know how many people were there.
Mhm.
But they tried to kind of figure it out, just kind of like in the movie where they're buried in the basement. Teddy
Yeah.
Roosevelt, of course, storming Panama to build the canal down in the basement. But the interesting thing about this Amy Archer Gilligan, of course, is that she was married in 1897. Amy Duggan was married to James Archer in 1897, who happened to die suddenly in 1910. She continued to run a lodging house that she had bought with him. And then late in 1913, 3 years later, she married Michael Gilligan, a vigorous widower with with family in town. Now, shaving a few years off her age on the wedding license, of course, a few short months later, in February of 1914, the 56-year-old Mr. Gilligan was found dead,
Go
having drawn up a
figure.
will, leaving his new wife his entire estate in the excess of $4,000.
What are the odds?
Of course, this did not go over well with his family.
Hmm.
And on his death certificate, it was listed as valvular heart disease with the primary cause of death with a secondary cause of acute villus attack.
Okay. You can't make this stuff up.
No, so she supposedly was poisoning her husbands with arsenic and poisoning those that came to stay at her. She owned a nursing home and a rest home in Windsor, Connecticut, and it was very famously that people like a Roach Motel would check in but wouldn't check out.
Oh, wow. Well, that is a good one.
All right, what is your number 4, my friend?
All right. So this is definitely a comedy, but I don't know how many people have seen this movie. It's a favorite of mine, and I'll say it right now. I was drawn to it because of the actress who was the star of it, and I stayed for just the puritanical humor and the fact that she's a witchy woman. I am talking about Veronica Lake in I Married a Witch from 1942. Uh,
Wow.
so this is actually when you talked about Criterion Collection. This is actually, I have this on Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection. I love this movie so much. I will say that it is probably not the most well acted film. There are definitely some plot holes to it, but I love this film. Just the chain reaction of mishaps and chaos. It's the story of two witches from 1672 who were unjustly burned at the stake by a Puritan John Woolley. Jennifer, the Veronica Lake character, filled with rage, cast a curse upon all generations of the Woolley family that each son would what a curse. Each son would marry the wrong woman and suffer great happiness, unhappiness, excuse me. And fast forward to the 1920s when a bolt of lightning strikes the tree and frees Jennifer and Daniel's souls. And the first thing they decide to do is to set their sights on a promising politician, Wallace Woolley. And not to give the ending away, but it turns out just fine. And it's again, it's really now if you don't know who, and I'm sure you do, but if you don't know who Veronica Lake is, she is a famous blonde beauty. Um, the Jessica Rabbit, her whole face and the hair that goes across her is based off of Veronica Lake. And
Even
just
the
I don't
movie poster as well
yeah.
has that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I just there were a lot of little quips. At one point, there's a fire and Jennifer sucks in some smoke, and so they bring a doctor, and he's a he's a witch, and he's like, oh well, it's getting late, so I guess I got to get into my straitjacket. I'll just call a broom. And there's a couple of little scenes after the imprisonment, but before they're released, where you see the Woolies throughout the ages and about how they're unhappy with their wives. And a Civil War Woolley is like, oh, I've got to get out of here. Where's the nearest recruiting office? And the wife is like, oh yeah, run off to a war like a big coward. So anyway, are you familiar with this film?
I am. And you know, this film actually with Bell, Book, and Candle were the inspiration for Bewitched.
I did not know that, but I totally see that.
And the other thing that's crazy about this film is that this was actually going to be remade with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman back in 2003.
Oh,
But
really?
it never made it past the pre-production stage.
I could see her.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise, he can do just about anything, but I could definitely see her pulling that off.
Yeah, he bought the rights to the movie and it was something that they were going to do together.
Wow.
But it's
Now,
that's a great one.
oh, good. So you approve?
I approve. I
All
approve
right.
100%. And
All
it's
right.
fun.
Well,
I think it's great because we haven't had much crossover yet.
nope, not yet. Not that we know of.
This may be
So
our first somewhat crossover
okay. All
for my
right.
number 3, right?
Well, let's go ahead and hear it.
All right. So this is going to be the 9th movie that this comedy team made in only the span of 2.5 years. Just think about that.
Wow.
9 movies in 2.5 years.
That's
And I'm
crazy.
talking about Bud Abbott and Lou Costello.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whereas you're going for the monsters, this one to me is one that I always love because it takes place in a radio station.
Ah, okay.
This film from 1942 was their 9th film being released, called Who Done It. Now, it's actually very noteworthy because this is the first Abbott and Costello film that they released that does not have a musical number in it,
Oh,
which was
really?
huge back then. You'd always have somebody singing a song or something,
Right.
and this had no musical numbers. Now, the plot basically is Chick Larkin and Mervyn Milgram both work as a soda counter at the local radio station's headquarters. Their true passion, however, is to become writers on a radio mystery show, and they attend a broadcast of a radio program called Murder at Midnight, along with one of the writers, Jimmy Turner, and the producer, Jane Little. Now, as the show begins, the network president, Colonel J.R. Andrews, is mysteriously electrocuted when he puts his hand to the microphone.
Oh.
Seeing this as an opportunity to become radio writers, Chick and Mervyn impersonate detectives and attempt to solve the crime with the help of Juliet Collins, who works for the station. So, the just the soda fountain in the beginning when they're working at the soda fountain, I'm in
Uh-huh.
tears already.
Really?
Guy comes in and asks for a Limburger sandwich. And so they have like a cake dome, and he takes the
Uh-huh.
dome off and he just about passes out from the smell of the Limburger. So he puts the dome back on, and of course, what's wrong? You got to make a sandwich for the guy. Don't give me that. Just make the sandwich. Oh, all right, and he's doing, and so he ends up getting a clothespin, puts it on his nose to make the sandwich so he can stand the smell. And then there's I forget his name, but there's an actor who's very well known for being very small. He was like a 30-year-old guy who looked like he was 12. He plays the usher for the radio show for the radio station. So he goes up to Lou Costello and he's like, "Do you have $2 for a nickel?" Yeah. And he started, like the whole thing gets them all like, ends up making like $1 on him.
That's hilarious.
And then one of the other things that's really interesting is that by this time, Who's on First was already a very well-known bit. In
Okay.
this movie, they actually have 2 references to Who's on First. First, they do during the murder scene, Abbott confuses Costello with volts and watts. So instead of Who's on First, they go back and forth about volts and watts. Now, Lou bleats in the middle of this. Next, you'll be telling me Watts is on second base.
Oh.
Then later on in the radio, there's a radio giveaway program scene which they use for the ending, which I don't want to give it away. But Bud and Lou, they're tuned into the radio to the broadcast and what's playing on the radio, but their own Who's on First routine, which they both look at each other and they go, "Oh, this isn't funny. Change it." Now, after they completed this film, Abbott and Costello began a tour in person of the United States, where they did the volts and watts routine as they were trying to help promote the selling of U.S. war bonds there in 42. We were just starting
Yeah, just
the
getting in.
war. And by the end of 42, three Abbott and Costello films, Who Done It, Pardon My Sarong, and Ride 'em Cowboy, ranked among Universal's top 5 highest grossing films of the 40s up to that point. And at
Wow.
the end of the year, film exhibitors voted Abbott and Costello the top box office stars. Um, and of course, Abbott and Costello remained among the country's top 10 box office stars for nearly every year up until 1952, including 48 when they did your number 5 pick.
Wow. Now, I'm obviously familiar. I love Abbott and Costello, but if I had to pick another movie, Buck Privates
Yes, 100%.
is
That would be
is
my
a
number
really good
2.
one. Okay, okay.
And that's the one really I think that just I mean, that's the one that you know it put them on the map because
Hmm.
the war effort was just gearing up at that point, and it really, it had all the classic uh, 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 Abbott and Costello shtick.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
Wow.
like the Who Done It because I like the radio show aspect of it because they're
Yeah.
putting on like a live radio show, which that's another thing that I always love is there's on Sirius XM they used to have an old time radio channel. It was just old time radio
They
shows,
still do. I
and
listen to it all
yeah,
the time.
I just unfortunately I don't
Oh,
because I canceled my subscription. But
oh. Okay, well then you need to find, and I'm going to shout out to him again. You need to look for a podcast called The Mysterious Old Radio Listening Society. Okay, and there are these three guys, but they will take a 30-minute episode and play it and then spend 30 minutes talking about it. And
mm,
it is fantastic. They've got over 300 something episodes now. I listen to them all the time. And if you like that one, then you're going to like this podcast.
I think I'll love it. I know I
Yeah.
myself I actually have a collection from back in the days of Napster where I just went and I found I have just about every episode on MP3 of Abbott and Costello's radio and shows, as well as You Bet Your Life.
Wow, really?
Yeah, a couple
Yeah,
of gigs worth of MP3s of those shows. Just
that's
they're just I can listen to them. They're timeless.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this one goes a little bit more into it's their extra website is called Ghoulish Delights because they do horror, suspense, and drama. So they don't do a lot of comedy, but man, it's I just absolutely love them. Um
What evil lurks in the minds of men, the shadow knows.
they do the shadow
Yep.
episodes for sure.
The Great Gildersleeve. No.
The Great Gildersleeve. Those play on the satellite.
Yep. Yep.
Yep. Yep. What a show. Hey, we're gonna do a waterworks department director. What comedy gold that is, but they do, they pull it off.
They
Uh,
do for sure.
so I am gonna go with my number 3. And so if we have any crossover, it is gonna be at least for sure Archie Leach because Carrie was an amazing actor. He could go from being funny to serious to mysterious and then back again. But if I had to pick one movie, which I don't have to, it would be 1947's The Bishop's Wife.
Look, you go for like these dramas, and it's like, but you see the comedy in them.
Yeah, I love this. So Episcopal Bishop Henry Brauman had dedicated months to meticulously planning an extravagant new cathedral with the hope that this wealthy yet obstinate widow would foot the bill. And while he's so focused on that, he becomes detached from his family. Enter Dudley, played by Cary Grant, an angel dispatched to aid Bishop in this time of need, but he does it in his own special, unique way. David Niven, of course, plays the bishop, and Loretta Young plays his beautiful but slightly perturbed wife, Julia. And again, yeah, I know this is more of a maybe a little bit more of a drama, but especially the Professor Wuthridge, who is just he is gold in every single scene that he is in. As a matter of fact, at one point he's talking with Dudley, who's helping him to figure out how to write a book. And he tells him, "God bless you." And Dudley replies, "Well, thank you. I'll pass that recommendation along." Um,
It's funny too because as we've said before, Cary Grant can deliver these comedic lines with just like that a straight man. I mean, he
yeah,
really, which makes it even that much more funny.
yeah. Julia at one point says, "Oh, Dudley, I never know when you're joking or you're serious." And he's like, "Well, I'm actually most serious when I'm joking." Just some great one-liners, some great zing, and it makes me chuckle because the bishop thinks that Dudley is now trying to move in on his wife, but
Right.
he's an angel, and so he can't do that. But he kind of is, and that's
I,
why he
I
has
think,
to move on.
and I think that this aspect of the movie is what was not brought forth when they remade it with Denzel.
Yeah.
And I mean, Denzel's a great actor and
Oh
stuff, but
yeah.
he just does not have that sort of like that straight face with a wink
Hmm.
that Carrie does.
Yes. Yeah. So
But gosh,
I'm glad I'm catching you on these.
no, this is great. Like this has been wonderful because it's like I get a kick out of like I also realize I know what you like. What I'm beginning to see what you really like for Christmas movies too. So,
Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well,
um,
let's see. We're finally to your penultimate choice. That's
yes,
my $5 word I have to use every episode, so I get my use out of it. Brought to you by penultimate.com. No, not really. So why don't you give us your second favorite comedy from before the 1960s?
this film is the reason why I split it at 1960.
Okay, great.
This film is was released in 1959. It starred Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis, and
Oh,
Jack Lemmon. The name of it, of course, is Some Like It Hot,
some like it hot. And also Joey Brown.
with George Raft, Pat O'Brien, who's
Uh-huh.
another amazing actor from the days, and which, by the way, a little side note: James Cagney and Pat O'Brien in Angels with Dirty Faces, one of my probably fave five dramas from this era.
Uh-huh.
Um, and Joey Brown. Now, the film received 6 Academy Award nominations, including
Wow.
Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Adapted Screenplay. And of course, it won for Best Costume Design. In 1989, the Library of Congress selected it as one of the first 25 films slated for preservations in the United States National Film Registry. Um, so the big reason why this film is why 1960 is our cutoff date is because this film was produced without the approval from the Motion Picture Code, the
Oh,
Hays Code. It was the first film that they pushed, and they did without getting that MP PC Hays Code stamp of approval because
uh-huh.
it featured cross dressing in it.
Ah, yes. Well,
Now, the code, of course, had been gradually weakening in its scope since the early 50s. Of course, we, had, Rebel Without a Cause and some of these other Blackboard Jungle and things like that, which were bringing back and kind of portraying the quote unquote rough teenage youth culture. But it was also, people wanted greater social tolerance. They had a greater social tolerance for taboo topics in film as the 50s were rounding into the 60s. Um, but they still enforced the code until the mid 60s. But it was a lot harder for them to enforce it after this film.
Yeah.
The overwhelming success of this film is considered one of the reasons why the code was retired. Now, the code was officially retired in 1968, but after this becoming such a hit film without that code seal of approval,
Yeah.
it really opened up the doors. Now, of course, the film centers around Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon, who are two characters that are musicians, and they get hired to play an event. And on their way to the event, they witness a mob murder, and so they realize they have to hide out. So they decide if they dress as women, they won't be as easily recognized. And of course, they go to they try to get jobs out of town, and there's no jobs out of town for male musicians, and so if we dress up as women musicians, we can we can get on this tour and get out of town, and so
Right.
they show back up and they join the band. Um, Marilyn Monroe actually was not the first choice for this role. And in fact, she actually surprised Billy Wilder in saying that she wanted to do it, which, of course, once they knew she was interested, there was nobody else that was even.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Now, one of course, my favorite scenes is the ending with Joey Brown,
Uh-huh.
very famously playing Osgood. The character Jerry is trying to get out of his promise to marry Osgood, played by Joey Brown, by listing reasons why Daphne, the of course is the girl's name that he takes on, and Osgood would not be a good couple, ranging, of course, from smoking habits to infertility. And Osgood, played by Joey Brown, with that award-winning smile, is just smiling away, and he has answers for each and every one of them. Of course, finally, Jack Lemmon takes off his wigs and says to his normal man's voice, "I'm a man." It's still smiling, not even looking, just looking straight ahead. Joey Brown goes, "Well, nobody's perfect." And that's the end. And not to ruin the ending, but my gosh, that's one of the best comedic endings I think ever. Joey Brown delivers it amazingly. Now, the plot itself was based on a screenplay for a French film that was titled, the translation was called Fanfare of Love, but the original script for it was untraceable. Nobody knew who actually wrote the script.
Oh, wow.
So the screenwriter found a copy of a 1951 German remake of the film and bought the rights to that script.
Okay.
Tony Curtis was spotted by Billy Wilder while he was making the film Houdini in 1953, and he thought Curtis would be perfect for the role of Joe. Um, he says he said in an interview, "I was sure that Tony was right for it because he was quite handsome, and when he tells Marilyn that he is one of the Shell Oil family, she has to be able to believe it."
Yeah.
Because there is a point where he takes off the girl, the cross dressing, and is trying to portray himself as a rich man to woo Marilyn Monroe. Um, and then Wilder's first idea for the role of Jerry was Frank Sinatra, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
But Frank didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't even show up for the audition.
Oh, wow.
He also considered Jerry Lewis and Danny Kaye.
Mm.
But finally, he saw Jack Lemmon in the comedy Operation Madball and said, "I think he'd be perfect for the part." Wilder and Lemmon would go on to make tons of films together, including The Apartment, as well as The Odd Couple, and a few others starring Walter Matthau with Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
Some Like It Hot was voted as the top comedy film by the American Film Institute's top 100 years, 100 last poll in 2000. And the Writers Guild of America has ranked the film screenplay as the 9th greatest ever written.
Wow. Man, you're bringing it hard for number 2.
Well, it is such a funny film, and the premise is hilarious. And Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon just pull it off so beautifully. And really, Marilyn Monroe plays her role well. I don't, she plays a bimbo in the film, but I don't think I think she was pretty. She knew
That's what she
she
was
knew her
doing,
way
huh?
around business,
Uh-huh.
kind of like Mae West, that same, sort of like, hey, come on and see me sometime. But it's like they were women that knew the industry and knew their way around it.
Yeah. And it's what they say. There's nothing funnier than putting a guy in a dress. You know?
Very true.
Yeah. So no, that's a great one. I really I do like that film. It does make me laugh, though I'm really, really interested in what your number one's going to be, and I'm dying to hear it because there's an actor who I was sure you were going to mention up to this point. So now I'm interested. But before we get to your number one, I think I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I'm positive that you're going to give my number two the Codachrome stamp of approval.
All right.
Okay. And it's because it is arsenic and old lace.
Yeah, there you go.
It is just like everything. You can see I bit straight through my tongue. That movie is just filled with hilarity. Um, you know, look, I probably should have told you, but you see, well, insanity runs in my family. And then the Abby and Martha are singing. He's like, well, actually, it practically gallops. Uh,
I just there's so as an ensemble. I mean, even like Peter Lorre has some
oh my God.
comic hits in it. But the thing you got to remember is that it's a play that was fleshed out night after night on stage. So I mean, by the time it made it to screen, they knew what was going to hit. You
Yes.
know, I mean, it's like that's why and I think that's just you know. But again, as I say, just like the Cary Grant, just kind of like there's that point where he tells the guy at the taxi to wait out front, and he's
Mhm.
like he runs over to her house and he runs back, and the guy's like still sitting there with the taxi, like, "Hey, buddy, you go, yeah, 1 minute, he's still running around." It's like, and the cops that come in and and the cop comes in and it's something about something going on here or something. Oh no, nothing going on here. Are you sure? Because it's like I don't. Oh
Is
my
that where he
god.
plays the trumpet and runs up the stairs and back?
Oh, because he's Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the funny thing is that and then they call the insane asylum
Hmm.
and they're going to commit him and they're like, well, let me see. Well, we have two Chester Arthurs and a Van Buren, but we don't have any Roosevelts. Like,
There's this joke that a dad joke that I've been telling recently, and it's you heard about that actress who was stabbed, right? The one who was in uh oh gosh, what was that movie that she was in where it's Legally Blonde, I think. It's Renee.
Reese Witherspoon.
No, with a knife.
Oh, that's bad.
But in this movie, Teddy is calling out Mr. Witherfork, and Mr. Witherspoon actually goes spoon, and Mortimer hands him a spoon. And I was like, oh, okay, okay. The jokes just keep on coming. 80 years and it's still awesome.
I mean, that just gives huge props to you know s- to a playwright that really, I mean, imagine seeing that. Like I said to my wife, I would really love to see this a revival of this on Broadway.
Yeah.
And who would
Yeah.
I cast?
Right. So, biting my tongue, you were talking about how Josephine Hull and Jean Adair were both actresses that were in the play at the same time. Um, Boris Karloff, who was playing Jonathan Brewster, was also at the time in Broadway. According to the biographer Cynthia Lindsay, who wrote Dear Boris, those two ladies went to their graves believing that Boris had been so saintly as to agree to let them go to Hollywood while he stayed and did the play.
Yeah.
But what actually happened was that the playwright, the producers of the play would not release him to go and do it. And that's one of the reasons why Raymond Massey's character looks a lot like Karloff. And I think somebody actually even mentioned something about his face looking like Karloff in the movie.
Yes, they do 100%. Yes.
Okay, yeah. One of the other funny things that I had found was that there's a cemetery near the Brewster's house, and Archie Leach is the name on the tombstone in the cemetery.
Ooh. Yes, I've
And
heard that too.
okay, and in his earlier picture, his girl Friday, his character Walter threatens somebody by saying, "Listen, the last guy who said that to me was Archie Leach just a week before I cut his throat." And so now they've put it into this movie. I just love that. That is some amazing Easter eggs.
It's funny because it's like even like when you watch the Hitchcock films and you just where's he gonna pop up? Like I always
Mm-hmm.
loved his cameos and
Yes.
even like from North by Northwest where it's just it's his director's credit and they shut the door on the bus on him. It's like, oh, there he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's funny. Those Easter eggs are awesome. I'm gonna have to look on the tombstones. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, His Girl Friday is a great movie as well.
Oh yeah. I mean
So,
it's so hard doing these that just really to really narrow down my fave five. I mean
yeah.
but it's
Well,
so fun.
what can I say? Yeah.
Oh, yes, I can fix your face real good. Of course, Peter Lorre and Casablanca as well.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. Well, we've done it. We are now at your favorite comedy from the before the 1960s. I'm very, very interested to know what it is. Lay it on me.
Well, this is really this was hard because I am a huge fan of the star of this next film, but to really figure out which one because I have my qualms and but I had to go with A Night at the Opera with the Marx Brothers,
Okay.
1935. I am a huge Marx Brothers fan, like and capitalized huge does not even begin. Um, I like the makeup of the group between Groucho's just wit,
Mhm.
the Chico's character, of like always like hearing something and then Harpo's just miming, it just I could just watch Harpo and crack up. Um, and when you mix them all together, it's just amazing. So, Night at the Opera, I mean, it really becomes the quintessential Marx Brother movie that they either go to Duck Soup or Night at the Opera.
Duck soup.
Um,
Yeah.
and so the thing is that the Paramount films, which were basically Duck Soup is one of them, were much more just madcap and zany. I mean, they were much more like a Bugs Bunny cartoon, where it's just, it's like just hanging out in Toontown.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when they went to MGM, Irving Thalberg, who actually stole them from Paramount, um, he basically suggested that they change their directions a little bit. In really their Paramount films, they would attack almost anybody who was unfortunate enough to cross their path, whether they deserved it or not. They would comedically be attacked. Now Thalberg felt that it made them seem unsympathetic. So particularly when they would just start going crazy on the women, to female film goers. So MGM, when they went to MGM, the brothers were kind of recast as more helpful characters. A lot of times they'd be saving the comic attacks for the villains or the bad guy in the film. Now, an interesting thing is that Night at the Opera, they actually toured with Night at the Opera for a year before they filmed this. They would actually they worked this film out in the theaters, and that's why I said that before about Arsenic and Old Lace. So they knew what was going to hit. They knew where the jokes were. They knew where to put the pauses, and they knew what didn't work and get the laughs, and they were able to tweak it. They actually opened Night at the Opera in New Haven, Connecticut, at the beginning of their tour, which I always, being a Connecticut guy, lives in Connecticut. I was like, man, can I get in a DeLorean and head back to 1934 and see that? Um, uh, in this point, they also, this was the first film without the fourth Marx brother, Zeppo. Zeppo, up to this point in the Paramount films, was always the straight man. He was kind of the one that Groucho would always, would be the witty one against, or would talk to Chico, and Chico would say something, and he was always the straight man for all of them. They realized that they had a better straight person in Margaret Dumont. And so in this film, Margaret Dumont really becomes the quintessential fourth brother, though she wasn't some of the Paramount films. Now, the funny thing about Margaret Dumont is that she never, ever knew in a million years that she was the straight woman. She
Uh-huh.
was a Shakespearean trained actress, and she was just doing the script. And when Groucho was saying all of his different lines, like, and she, hold me closer, hold me closer. If they hold me any closer, you're going to be behind me. I mean, it's like he would just be doing this, and she was just seeing it as her line. And all the way to when she passed away, she never saw herself as a part of the comedy act,
Yeah.
which was just so classic. And actually, when she passed away at her funeral, Groucho actually gave her, I think, 3 or 4 dozen roses,
Yeah.
and said the card that he actually said, he actually spoke at her funeral and said, "I would not be where I am today without her."
Wow.
Her being my straight woman, like he says, she was a part of the act that she never even realized.
Yeah.
Um, so with that kind of being brought in, it's kind of funny because earlier, like in the Paramount, when they did Coconuts, they actually brought Thelma Todd in, who was a blonde actress at the time in the 30s, for Paramount. She's also in Dracula. They brought her in as the straight woman, and because she was younger and more of a looker, the fact that Groucho was trying to foil her did not go over well with the audience. It was that whole
Oh,
Margaret Dumont, like more stately, widowed woman or something that really worked really well.
yeah.
Um, Couple memorable scenes in Night at the Opera. Of course, the contract scene where Chico and Groucho are going back and forth, and things are kind of getting quote unquote lost in translation.
Uh-huh.
Where he's Chico, hey, wait, what does this say here? This thing here, and Groucho, oh, that's the usual clause that's in every contract. That just says it says right here, if any of the parties participating in this contract are not shown to be in their right mind, the entire agreement is automatically nullified. Well, I don't know about that one. It's all right. That's in every contract. Well, that's what they call a sanity clause. You can't fool me. There ain't no such thing as a sanity clause. Like Santa Claus. And then the other scene that's memorable and been mimicked hundreds of times, even in music, like one of Sting's music videos, to Cyndi Lauper music video, to television shows, is of course the stateroom scene where just everybody keeps piling into the stateroom. And it starts off with just the four of them, and then somebody kind of, a plumber here to check the pipe. The plumbers come in, and then manicure your nails. Yep, all right, and meanwhile, like the whole time Harpo's sleeping, and so he's just like passed out on top of people. And he starts hugging the manicurist, and she's like, "I need to get started on your nails." And he's like, I think he's already gotten started on you, because he's like hugging her and everything. I mean, and all this madcap going on. And it all starts off with the waiter coming up and asking them, because he's got the three of them stowing away with him. And so he's like, Stuart, can you have any juice? Why, yes, sir. I have prune juice, orange juice, grapefruit juice. Hey, turn off the juice. You're going to electrocute someone. And then they continue on, and he's like, I need two medium boiled eggs. And then you hear from inside, and two hard boiled eggs, and two hard boiled eggs. Honk. Make that three hard boiled eggs. Honk, honk, and a duck egg. So the funny thing too is that, so Groucho said in one of his books, he actually said he was so appalled by an early draft of the script that he apparently was written by Burt Kalmar and Harry Ruby, that he shouted, "Why beep around with second-rate talent? Get Kaufman and Ryskin," which Kaufman and Ryskin did their. They were some of the big writers at MGM at the time. Um, now, the film was supposed to have begun, in fact, without the trademark MGM lion, but instead was going to be each one of the brothers taking turns making fun of the lion. Harpo, of course, was going to, when he roared, was going to be his horn.
Yeah.
Now, Louis B. Mayer was not happy about that, and he actually had it scrubbed and had the original lion put back in because he felt it cheapened their respected trademark.
Oh, please.
Now, Night at the Opera, I found this funny. A Night at the Opera was actually banned in Budapest, believe it or not.
Yeah.
They thought it was too subversive.
Oh, okay.
It was
Well.
banned along with a John Ford war movie called The Lost Patrol.
Weird.
March 20th, 1936, when it made it to Budapest. What does this say here? Oh, I just wrote so many notes here. Oh, this is funny. With the Sanity Clause bit, Detective Comics number 826, written by Paul Dini, pays homage to one of the many things that pays homage to Night at the Opera. In it, the Joker captures Tim Drake, who's a third Robin, takes him on a mad spree in a car, running over anyone they encounter over the Christmas season. Now, when the Joker plans to kill a street Santa Claus, Robin distracts him by saying, "You can't fool me. There ain't no Sanity Claus." The Joker laughs, and then they get an argument over which Marx Brothers film was the source of the gag, which he thought, which the Joker thought it was the room service.
Oh.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
That's a deep dig. Yeah.
A little nod from Paul Dini there as well. But it's kind of interesting too. The other thing that I realized is that there actually was a memo that was sent by Irving Thalberg of what the each character's role was going to be when he kind of changed it. And he was a huge champion for the Marx Brothers getting them to MGM. And he died suddenly after I think while they were in production for their second film for MGM, which was A Day at the Races. And when he passed away, they lost all their support at MGM. And Louis B. Mayer hated them with a passion, could not, thought they were idiots. He called them to a meeting in his office, and because he wanted to talk to them about their future at MGM. And he trademark was late like he usually was. And when he showed up 45 minutes later, the four brothers, including Zeppo, because at that point Zeppo had kind of worked into becoming their management, so to speak. The four brothers were totally nude, cooking hot dogs at on the fireplace in his office, waiting for him. They said, we got hungry waiting for you, so we figured we'd roast our dogs and our dogs. Which at that time, nobody did that to Louis B. Mayer. I'll tell you that.
That's hilarious.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's really, it is, between Duck Soup and Night at the Opera, Duck Soup being much more zany and much more kind of left, right, just jokes coming from all directions. Night at the Opera, you have the love story with Alan Jones and Kitty Carlisle singing, and I will say that Roger Ebert famously said that he would fast forward during the singing scenes.
Oh. Wow.
That is my number one, and I will always, when it comes on Turner Classic Movies rotation, I put it on at night, and I fall asleep listening to it just because I can quote it in my head, and it just helps and wherever it is.
It centers you, huh?
Yes, sir.
Wow. That is awesome, sir. That is a great pick. I will be honest. I'm surprised that there are no Three Stooges on your list.
Well, that's because they never officially did full length movie.
Don't they go to the moon or Mars or something?
All those are all I think at least, unless you have a different source, those are usually all considered shorts,
Oh,
Colombian
really?
shorts. Yeah, I would have definitely done a Three Stooges, but um, they yeah, because they're best remembered for 190 short subject films for Columbia Pictures. That's
Yeah. I knew they had done, obviously, they had done tons of shorts, but I thought, wow, I guess no, I guess that's right. I'm looking here. They're all shorts.
well, it says here. So here's the interesting
220.
thing
Oh,
is
wait,
that
no. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
they did full length movies, but that was with Curly Joe,
Uh-huh.
which we don't talk about the Curly Joe era.
Oh.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Wow. Yeah, so I am seeing
Yeah, because it's
well,
like the Have Rocket Will Travel,
that's what I was thinking of.
Snow
Have
White
Rocket
and
Will
the Three
Travel. Yeah.
Snow White and the Three Stooges, Three Stooges meet yeah, those are see, like for me, Curly Joe is just, because even like Shemp kind of gets on my nerves. I like Shemp,
Uh-huh.
but as a part of the Three Stooges, it was like I'm classic Curly
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
comes Disorder in the Court. Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
dude.
Okay, well that makes sense then. That makes
Don't
total
use
sense.
don't he is that a don't use the vernacular, that's a derby. Do you he's asking, do you swear? No, but I know all the words.
We could do a whole thing on that.
Oh gosh, yes.
A whole thing on that.
And also too, another one, a huge fan of Little Rascals
Mm-hmm.
and Laurel and Hardy. Both how I think Hal Roach was a genius,
Yeah.
comedically. But again, those are all shorts.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's like I still have, like, one of the few DVDs I still own is Universal put out like a 6 disc set of all the Little Rascals,
Oh
all
wow.
the way from like way back to like before like Alfalfa and Spanky
Mm-hmm.
era. And I mean, I watch those like crazy, and a lot of them now are not politically correct.
Yeah.
Um, but oh my gosh, that I could. There's one of my favorites, Little Rascals, is the monkey called Cotton, and
Mm-hmm.
there's like a lunch counter, and so they sit, Spanky and sits up at the lunch counter, and he thinks Cotton the monkey's running the lunch counter because the guy who ran the lunch counter walked away and left his hat, and the monkey put the hat on. uh, it's just, hey Cotton, make me a cheeseburger. They got this like little snow monkey flipping cheeseburgers, and, hey, give me a piece of pie. And then at the end of it, it's the one very famously where they're fat and they're bouncing off
Yeah.
each other. They go, "Remarkable." Sorry, but I digress.
No. No.
I
Well,
am ready to hear your number one.
you have already spoken my number one, and I was able to bite my tongue there because my favorite comedy from pre 1960 revolves around the main character who is 6 feet 3.5 inches tall. And I am, of course, talking about Harvey.
Harvey the Puka.
Harvey the Puka. I love this movie. Everything about it, he is perfection in this film as Elwood P. Dowd, an amiable but eccentric man whose best friend is a white rabbit named Harvey that no one else can see. Well, that's not true. His aunt can see him every once in a while. But this is just another perfect casting, perfect performance. And for all of the comedy that ensues here, I think my favorite line out of this entire movie is years ago, my mother used to say to me, she'd say, "In this world, Elwood, you must be." She always called me Elwood. "In this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart or oh so pleasant." Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant. You may quote me. And I love the fact that nothing in this movie bothers him. He is just the epitome of saying yes to everyone. You know, his sister wants to put him in to have him committed, and he's everybody around him is like, well, okay, he's not the crazy one, you're the crazy one, and they lock her up at one point, you know. And there's the scene where near the end, and I won't give away the ending, where the sister is being driven to the sanitarium by a taxi driver. You remember this exchange?
Yes,
Yeah.
Josephine Home.
Mhm. And says, you know, yeah, lady, I bring people up here all the time. We'll stop and watch a sunset in the middle of a rainstorm, or we'll stop and watch the birds when there ain't no birds. He said, and then when they bring them back, they're just changed and they're just normal. And I tell you what, he needs to stay exactly as he is. And I butchered that, but that's the
Yeah.
general, that's the general. And the way that he goes through the movie with no one else seeing Harvey, including us, but yet we know by the end he's there.
Well, how about I love the part the security guard at the rest home is reading about a puka, and he's a
Mhm.
puka, and why are you reading this? And like and it's like he's messing around with what he's reading, and he goes, "Hey, wait a minute." I forget his name, the character actor. Oh my gosh, so funny.
There's so many great performances, in this
Josephine Hull,
movie.
by the way, won Best Supporting Actress for that for her
Really?
role in the film. Yep, and she also won the Golden Globe as well. And Jimmy
Wow.
Stewart was nominated but did not win.
Yeah, that's hard to believe because he was fantastic in this film.
You know,
Um,
something that I think business wise, this film also marks something very interesting. This was the first film that James Stewart didn't do under quote unquote contract.
uh-huh.
He actually took a percentage of the profits to do the film. He
Wow.
ended up making $200,000 from the film, which was
That's
which is an estimated $2.9 million now.
wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
he was actually he did it, and then oh gosh, what's her name? In Bringing Up Baby with Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn.
Hmm.
She took his lead and she did the same. I forget the movie, but the both of them like they basically they the two of them demolished the contract system at that point for the studios.
Wow, that's awesome.
And yeah, he
The
did it on this film.
the security guard was Jesse White.
Yes, very well
Yes.
known. He's a
Hmm.
character actor, always in all these different films.
Yes. Yes, he was. And he acted all the way up until the 90s.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Look, I'm looking at his IMDb at 183 credits.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Everything, of course, Adam's Family and just movies and TV and yeah, no, he was great. But that's crazy. I recently saw something that said that they offered Vincent Price a percentage of the sales of the Thriller album, or $20,000, and he took the $20,000.
It,
But
it
it
it's
could go
funny.
either way.
It's so funny because it's like this film is so much a part of pop culture.
Hmm.
It is alluded to in so many other things. Like if you've um what you call it, like Field of Dreams, right?
Yeah.
He's talking about he hears voices from the cornfield. He walks into the house. What's his daughter watching on TV?
Mm.
Harvey,
True.
you
Yeah.
know. In the Shawshank, Andy Dufresne when he creates Randall Stevens,
Yeah.
for the laundering the money. They ask who it is. He's a phantom, an apparition, second cousin to Harvey the Rabbit.
Well, I know that I read that Jimmy Stewart had said this was his most difficult role. he
Oh
felt,
yeah.
you know.
'Cause-
And it was also supposedly his idea that they pull some of the camera scenes back when Harvey was in the scene with them so that it would give the appearance that there was something there to be seen.
well, even like later on, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. You ever see that cartoon?
Yeah, yeah.
You know the city's founder,
No, is it Harvey?
Elwood P. Dowd.
Oh.
So I mean, it's like, it's such a, for me, it's a film that it was there on. I said before, it was like in my honorable mentions, like, but I just it's kind of funny because in my head sometimes I get my wires crossed between Harvey and Arsenic and Old Lace because of Josephine Hull.
Mm-hmm. I could
And
see that. Yeah.
Insane Asylum and Josephine Hull, and I get my wires crossed.
Yeah. Did you know that he played Elwood Dowd that Stewart did in the 70s
Did he?
on stage?
Really? They
Mm-hmm.
redid it on the stage? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see, there was something else. Where did I put
Oh yeah,
that?
right here. This is the movie quote. Elwood P. Dowd made it to the AFI's 100 movie quotes.
Uh-huh.
We mentioned earlier, and well, I've wrestled with reality for 35 years, Doctor, and I'm happy to state I finally won out over it.
Wow.
Yeah, there are a lot of remakes of this too. We
Yes,
got
there were. And as a matter of fact, he remade it for like the Hallmark
yes.
Channel or something.
It's
Um,
72 with Helen Hayes as his sister,
oh, really? Okay.
Jesse
70.
White as Dwayne Wilson, and Fred Gwynn.
Yeah. I have this on VHS, and I remember looking at the trivia, and my copy of the VHS has an introduction with him on it. And I
Really,
remember them saying that that was one of the top VHS sales that the year that came out.
it's interesting too because in '58 they redid it for TV with Art Carney.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Elizabeth Montgomery, Fred Gwynn, Charlotte Ray, and Jack Weston. That's
Uh-huh.
crazy. And then in '96 they did it with Harry Anderson,
Oh, I think I remember that.
with Swoosie Kurtz as
Mm-hmm.
Vita, and then Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And so, the interesting thing too about the book is they talk about how much he drinks, and that's how he met Harvey,
Yeah,
was a drink. But yet you don't see him take one drink in the entire film,
very true.
and that was because of the code,
Yeah, that's
at the time.
crazy.
Yeah,
That code that was smashed to bits 10 years later
right.
by two men in dresses.
Yeah, that's so funny.
It's
Um,
crazy when you look at it too. They come just seeing the merchandising and film rights um, have been bantered around since Mary Chase, who owned them, passed away in '96, and the rights were sold to Miramax, which they beat out Walt Disney,
uh,
Universal, and New Line for them. And then they wanted to redo Harvey. Miramax wanted to do Harvey, but we all know what happened with
yeah.
that.
I also read that Peggy Dow is the only remaining actor still
Really?
alive, and of course Harvey.
And Spielberg, for a while, it says Spielberg wanted Tom Hanks to do. He wanted to remake it with Tom Hanks,
Oh,
which
I could
I
see
could
that.
see it for sure, 100%.
Yeah.
And then he also approached Robert Downey Jr. in
Um,
2009, but I
yeah,
think
maybe not.
that was right around Iron Man started
Yeah.
making.
Yeah, now he's too big.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then in 2018, it was reported that Netflix had started developing a version of Harvey as well.
Huh.
Interesting. I mean,
Yep.
it's such a classic film, and it really is really funny. That's a great number one for you.
Well, thank you. I
Choice.
appreciate it. It offsets my some of my other choices.
It offsets your Christmas movies.
Wow. Well,
Oh
this
man,
has been so much fun. You have given me so much knowledge. I want to talk just old movies with you.
we should we should do another Fave 5, and we should do um I don't know, we should figure out. We should figure out another one with the classic films because I could do this all. As Captain America says, I could do this all day.
So, all right. Well, you want to do dramas?
Yeah, we could do dramas.
All right,
I think
we'll
that
do
we'll do it.
dramas. Now,
We'll
do
do
we
it.
need
This is fun.
do we want to do a time period as well?
Let's do. Let me see here.
I personally would like to do pre-70s.
Pre-70s. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was gonna say because we could go before like 55, but
Oh
I don't want
gosh.
to wipe you out.
Oh, why don't we stick with 60s? Why don't we stick with pre-60s?
Yeah.
And that'll be a follow-up to this.
Wow, yeah, because that fits in. I'm doing a little for those playing the home game. I'm doing a little cheating, just kind of looking at a couple movies that I'd put in and where they would land. Definitely be pre-60s for sure.
Well, that's it. I just wrote it down in ink.
There we go.
So there we
it's a
go. That is
it's a
awesome.
done thing. We have it now. It's done.
All right. Well, again, I really, really want to thank you for doing this, and I can't tell you how excited I am that we finally got to put it in the can.
Well, thank you very much. I really very much enjoyed it. I loved your picks, and I loved being. It's funny because it's like when you do something like this, it really it makes you kind of like stop and really think. Like, okay, what is it that like I did a podcast with a gentleman who likes to say, what was the first time you heard a song and realized it's something you liked? And
Hmm.
it's like, man, I had to really think about that.
No kidding.
And I brought it all the way back to the Muppet movie
Oh,
and hearing Kermit sing Rainbow Connection. That's like kind of like the first time because I remember I went out and I had my parents buy me the soundtrack, and it was like the song that I listened to over and over again was Kermit singing the Rainbow Connection.
wow. That's a tough. I think one of the very first songs that would have to think would be the theme for SWAT.
Wow, that's a cool one. That's a
Yeah,
cool one.
that one sticks. And of course, there's no words, but I mean, I can remember see going around. I mean, singing it. Da-da-da,
Yeah,
da-da-da.
that's a
You
funky
know,
one too.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, like
Wow.
or like TV themes like that you.
Hmm.
It's kind of funny too. Like you ever like have like a show like you remember watching as a kid and you loved it,
Yeah,
and then you watch it now as an adult and you're like bored out of your skull. Like this
yeah.
is so like for me it was Michael Landon in Highway to Heaven
Heaven. Yeah, yeah.
because I used to love him and Victor French because they just had such a great banter back and forth.
Right.
And I watched an episode of Highway to Heaven, and like after about 10 minutes, I was like, oh my God, I cannot watch any more of this. This is so bad. It's just like this like old woman, and she's like, what will I ever do? And then the music swells for like 60 seconds. And I'm like, oh my God, can we go to commercial already?
Well, but a show that never gets old is Kolchak, the Night Stalker. I can
Hey, I've
watch that
never
show
seen it.
over and over and over again.
I'm gonna have to see it now. Is that
Really?
is that a Fave 5?
Oh my God. There's only, I believe, 13 episodes,
Hmm.
but oh my God, it's so good.
I was very I was about to deep dive into but then I realized it was time for us to do this the Twilight Zone episode you did there.
Oh wow. So I've done two so far because we're
Right, yeah,
doing
because I
each
saw the
season.
latest one, season
Yeah.
2, and
Yeah. So
there's
are
some
you
good ones.
yes, there really are. Going back and rewatching those, it's like, oh my gosh.
And then
And
the
I'm also working on a Tales from the Crypt with my friend Nelson. And we're doing the
nice.
same type of thing. We're picking like 3 or 4 episodes from each season.
Now,
So
have you ever seen Tales from the Dark Side?
oh my God, yeah.
Because like that with the theme music to Stranger Things is the basically the Tales from the Dark
Basically
Side
same thing.
music.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
They did some Stephen King and they did Richard Matheson, if I'm not mistaken, but that was some good stuff.
that was freaky stuff. And
Yeah.
that was syndication, so that was like hit or miss.
Yeah.
And then
True.
the other one was remember when they remade the Twilight Zone, like they did the new episodes.
Yeah. Well, they've done that twice now because they did
Right.
it in
Well,
the
not the
90s
yeah,
and then they did it recently on Paramount.
it was like the late 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Because I remember there's this one episode, it was kind of like a play on an early 50s episode where a woman uh digging in her front yard, and she pulls out a box with a remote control in it, and she can pause the world. So like the baby's crying, and like her husband's yelling at her, and she pauses life, and she's
Oh,
basically like,
wow.
and then and so she's like using it now to pause and fast forward, which later on becomes an Adam Sandler film. um
I was thinking that.
and then like the big hook, because there's always the hook, right? The big hook is that you suddenly hear, because remember that this had to be like 86, 87, because you hear alarms go off, and she runs outside, and you see a missile, and it was like a nuclear
Oh,
missile. And so she pauses it to life, because, and then basically, if she hits play, the whole world's going to end. So it's like she ends up,
being the
you
only
know
person.
because it's like she's using it to like turn down the baby and do, and now at this point she'll do anything to be able to hit play again and just be with her family, and she can't because she's going to die.
Wow.
That was like, I remember that I was like 8 or 9 or 10, and I remember that was like so freaking deep in my head. It was like,
Yeah.
I was
Wow.
so scared, like, because that was like the big thing back then was, the Russians were going to bomb us with nuclear missiles.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Good stuff.
Remember Amazing Stories?
Oh my God. Yeah.
My favorite one of those is my fave five. Number one would
I
be Christopher Lloyd, Go to the Head of the Class.
don't
It
remember
was
that.
the boy, I forget the boy's name, but he was always redhead and always played the geeky kid. And Mary Stuart Masterson was the girl, and she comes over and comes over with this, to do homework, and they play a heavy metal record backwards, and
Mm.
it was the curse of something, and the curse was supposed to have somebody lose their voice, and so they wanted their English teacher, played by Christopher Lloyd, very creepy,
Oh.
to lose his voice so they didn't have to deal with him. And so they do the incantation, so they needed a picture of the person, and so they rip out the picture in the yearbook, but when they rip it, they rip the page so that it rips across his neck.
Oh.
And so when he, they're like, did we kill him? I don't, they go to see him. And so um when they go to his house and they look in the window, he's, or they go into the house or something, and like, I think we killed him. And then all of a sudden the eyes open, and he goes, Mr. Brand, you've not been doing your homework, have you? And then the body gets up, but the head is still on the bed, because when they took the picture,
Oh.
so it's like his neck got ripped off. And so it's like him, like the body's like running around and holding his head, like, and he's like, come on, you idiot, like yelling at his body. I mean, it's so Christopher Lloyd. I'm sorry, that was a long
No,
explanation, but
I haven't
that was
seen that
a fun
one.
one.
I don't remember that one.
Go
I
to the
know they
Head of the
just redid
Class.
them though.
That was Bob Zemeckis
Oh
directed that.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's a good guy. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
This has been fun. Thank you, man. I
Oh
really
man, thank
appreciate
you.
chatting.
This was great. And all of you out there in the podcast universe, I want to thank you for listening to this episode of Fave 5 from Fans. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. It's a free way you can help to grow the Plastic Microphone Studios. And if you like the show, please consider telling a friend about us. And if you don't like the show, maybe consider telling someone who cuts in line in front of you at Starbucks, and just maybe it'll ruin their day. Who knows? We invite you to interact with us on Twitter/X at Fave, the number 5 from Fans. New episodes come out every Friday, so be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you catch a podcast. And don't forget to look for our other show, Complete Disarray with Jamie Ray, where we take one topic and just ramble on and on and on without end, ad nauseum. I mean, but in a totally good way. You'll enjoy. And remember, folks, it may not be the best, it may not be the most popular, but if it's your favorite, then it's good enough for us. Thanks so much for joining us. Coda, take us home.
Remember, if you say the secret word, you win $50. The secret word is something you have around the house. Mr. Fenneman, tell us the secret word. The secret word for today is Fave 5. Good night, everybody. Sorry, that's all I could come up with.
No, that's great. That's great. I mean, every one of them is different. You know, some people just go like, "Good night."
I could do this. I could do want me to do my Don Pardo real fast?
Go ahead.
It's Saturday Night Live with Phil Hartman, Michael Myers, Dana Carvey, musical guest, the Cranberries.